She didn't leave because she was brave. She left because she finally did the math, and every single number said she was already dead. Cleo Reeves was not born broken. She was built that way, brick by brick, year by year, by a man who understood that the most dangerous cage is the one a woman builds around herself, because she believes she deserves it. She aged out of foster care at 18 with $4 to $7 and the kind of hope that only survives in people who have never once been chosen. No family, no safety net, just a GED certificate and the unshakable belief that when love finally arrived, it would feel like rescue. It did, for exactly 4 months. Troy Calloway found her at 20. He was 32, well-dressed, unhurried, the kind of man who pulled chairs out, remembered how you took your coffee, and made you feel, for the very first time, like you were worth remembering. He was also the kind of man who had done this before, and he knew exactly which women would not fight back. Hi, welcome to this beautiful storytelling channel. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. By year 2, no friends he hadn't approved. By year 3, no bank account he didn't monitor. By year 4, she had learned to read the entire mood of a house by the sound of footsteps. Slow meant safe. Fast meant hide. But Troy's real weapon was never his hands. It was his mouth. You're a foster kid, Cleo. The system already forgot you. I am the only record that you exist. She believed him. For 6 years, she believed him. Until the Tuesday night in the garage. Until the black Escalade. Until the hand inside the trunk. Still moving. Still pushing. Still trying. She told herself she didn't see it. For 14 months, she told herself she didn't see it. But the math never stopped. So on a frozen January night, she packed one bag, $40, a burner phone, and a shelter address she had memorized from a laundromat pamphlet, because writing it down felt too dangerous. She walked out. No dramatic goodbye. No final look back. Just a woman in a red wool sweater, the only thing in that entire house that was purely, entirely haze, walking into the dark. She thought the hardest part was already behind her. She had no idea the most dangerous moment of her life was still ahead, sitting in a train car, watching her, waiting. She thought the most dangerous part of the night was already behind her. She had no idea the most dangerous part of the night was about to sit down beside her. January in Chicago doesn't feel like weather. It feels like punishment. Cleo walked 4 blocks to the Red Line station with her collar pulled up and her left eye still swollen. That deep, ugly swelling that changes the shape of your face and makes strangers look away fast. She didn't run. Running draws attention. Troy had taught her that. She hated that his lesson still lived in her bones even as she was fleeing him. The train was nearly empty. She pressed herself into the far corner of the last car, backpack in her lap, eyes on the black window glass. A woman she barely recognized stared back. 14 stops to the shelter. $40. 1 week if she was careful. After that, she didn't let herself think after that. The doors opened at Sox 35th. He stepped on alone. Tall, dark overcoat. The kind of stillness that doesn't come from peace. It comes from a man who has made peace with being the most dangerous thing in any room he enters. He scanned the car in exactly 2 seconds, not looking for a seat, counting threats. Then he sat beside her, not across, not near the door. Beside her, every nerve in Cleo's body. 6 years of marriage to a man with unpredictable hands, fired at once. He didn't look at her. He looked straight ahead. And then, quietly, in English so precise it felt like a scalpel, he said, "The man who's been following you since Cermak just got on through the rear door. Don't turn around. Don't move. Just listen." Cleo stopped breathing. Her eyes moved to the window reflection. Dark coat. Back of the car. Standing too still for a man just catching a late train. Her hands went cold. Troy sent someone. Before she even reached the shelter. Before she even got 14 stops away, Troy had already sent someone to finish it. The stranger beside her didn't move, didn't reach, didn't perform urgency. He just waited, like a man who already knew exactly how this night was going to end. And somehow, that stillness was the most terrifying thing of all. She had one question burning through everything else. If this stranger knew she was being followed, why was he telling her? What did he want? Speech balloon, a strange man on a late-night train, just told Cleo she's being hunted. Would you trust him or run? And which direction would you even run, Tio? Tell me below. Chapter 3 is where everything you think you know gets flipped completely upside down. Troy didn't want her back. He never wanted her back. What Troy wanted, what he had paid $40,000 for, was a clean ending, and the man sitting beside her on that train was supposed to deliver it. 6 days before Cleo walked out of that brownstone, Troy made a phone call, not to a lawyer, not to a private investigator, to a number stored under a single chess piece emoji, the kind of number that exists in a city shadow economy, passed quietly between men who have things to hide and money to spend hiding them. Troy needed Cleo gone. Not gone as in left, gone as in unreachable. Permanently, because Cleo Reeves had seen something 14 months ago that she had never spoken aloud. Not to a friend, not to a hotline, not to God in the dark. She had buried it under pure survival instinct. But Troy knew what she'd seen. He knew because he'd seen her face 1/2 second in that garage doorway before she turned around and went back to the kitchen and never said a word. He'd been watching her ever since, waiting to see if she'd talk. She never did, but a silent witness is still a witness. And Troy was done waiting. The contract was simple. Find the woman, confirm her location, deliver a quiet resolution. No evidence, no body to explain. The broker sent one photograph, one name, and the shelter address Cleo didn't know she'd been tracked researching. He sent it all to one man, Minute Jun Kwan, 11 years running the Dragon Syndicate's Midwest operation, a reputation built on two qualities that almost never exist together, absolute precision and absolute silence. He took the contract. He got on the train at Sox 35th. He sat beside her, and then he looked at her face, the swollen eye, the split lip, the red sweater she was gripping like it was the last proof she was still a person. Something moved inside Minute Jun Kwan, something that 11 years of building an empire had buried completely. He picked up his phone, typed 2 words to his soldier at the back of the car. Stand down. 2 words that cost him everything he'd spent 11 years building. Speech balloon the man hired to kill Cleo just called it off. But WHY? What did he see in her face that changed everything? Drop your theory below, because Chapter 4 reveals a secret he's been carrying for years, and it will break you. He didn't save her because he was good. Minute Jun Kwan was not a good man. He saved her because she reminded him of the one person he had failed to save before, and that grief chose this exact moment to become something other than silence. The soldier at the rear of the train read the text and went completely still. In 11 years, Minute Jun had never aborted a contract mid-execution. The Dragon Syndicate did not give refunds. It did not accept incomplete work. Every man in that organization understood one thing clearly. An aborted contract was not a professional failure. It was a declaration of war. Against the client, against the broker, against the syndicate itself. Minute Jun understood all of this. He sent the text anyway. Then he turned to Cleo, not gently, not with warmth, with the specific directness of a man who does not waste words because words have cost him before. He told her everything. The contract, Troy's name on it, the fact that her escape had been anticipated, tracked, and Monday eyes before she'd walked 4 blocks from that brownstone. He told her the shelter address wasn't safe. The broker already had it. He told her she had 90 minutes before Troy realized the job wasn't done, and made other arrangements. Then he said, I can take you somewhere Troy cannot reach. I'm telling you this once. If you come with me, you'll be safe. If you walk off this train alone, I cannot promise you the same." Cleo looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "You are going to kill me." He didn't look away. "Yes." "What changed?" A pause. Long, heavy. "You look like someone I once let down." She followed him off the train, not because she trusted him, because every other option had just been removed, and because guilt, in a man like this, was the closest thing to a guarantee she was ever going to get. But as the train doors closed behind them, Cleo realized she hadn't asked the most important question. Who was the person he'd failed to save? And what had happened to her? Speech balloon Minute Jun just walked away from everything he built, for a woman he was hired to kill. Do you think he made the right call? And who do you think he lost before? Tell me below. Chapter 5 takes you inside his world, and nothing will prepare you for what Cleo finds there. The building had no name on the lobby directory. The elevator required a keycard and a fingerprint scan. And when the doors opened on the 41st floor, Cleo understood for the first time what it looks like when power doesn't need to announce itself. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Chicago burning below in amber and white. Every highway, every bridge, every neighborhood grid visible, and still and impossibly far from the train car she'd been in 40 minutes ago. The furniture was spare, precise, expensive in the way that never shouts. No clutter, no warmth. A room that felt less like a home and more like a command center someone had forgotten to leave. A woman was already there. Isole Park, sharp-featured, dangerous in the way that comes from being underestimated for a decade and learning to weaponize it. She looked at Cleo the way a mathematician looks at an equation that doesn't balance. She spoke to Minute Jun in fast Korean. He answered in 2 sentences. Isole went quiet. That silence, Cleo would later understand, was not acceptance. It was the sound of an entire organization trying to process a version of Minute Jun Kwon none of them had seen before. He showed Cleo to a room. Clean, quiet, a lock on the inside that only she controlled. He stood in the doorway and said, without softening it, "This is not a safe house. This is my house. Troy cannot reach you here, but you are inside something that has its own dangers. Understand both of those things equally." Cleo looked at the room, the lock, then at him. Why does the lock only work from the inside? Something moved in his face. Not a smile, the shadow of one, because you decide when the door opens. She sat on the edge of the bed and cried for exactly 4 minutes. Then she stopped, washed her face, sat at the window, and started thinking about the garage, the hand, the trunk, about what exactly Troy had paid $40,000 to keep buried forever. Because whatever was in that garage, it was bigger than their marriage. Much bigger. Speech balloon Cleo is safe, for now, but she's sitting inside a Mafia empire on the 41st floor of a building with no name. Safe from Troy. But is she actually safe? What do you think Minute Jun really wants from her? Chapter 6 drops the bomb that changes this entire story forever. The man in the trunk wasn't a stranger. He was a federal witness. And the moment Cleo said his name out loud, the entire city stopped breathing. His name was Desmond Okafor, 41 years old, former logistics manager at a port of Chicago shipping company, turned federal informant 18 months earlier in exchange for a reduced sentence on wire fraud charges. His testimony, if ever delivered, would dismantle Troy's entire operation. 3 interlocking networks, 2 city aldermen, a procurement scheme bleeding Chicago's infrastructure budget for 9 straight years. Desmond Okafor had gone missing 14 months ago. Officially, presumed fled. Unofficially, the federal prosecutor handling the case had quietly told her supervisor she believed he was dead and that the person responsible had connections too powerful to touch without political cover. Cleo didn't know any of this when she stood in the garage doorway at 11:08 p.m. and watched Troy close that trunk. She only knew the hand, the specific, terrible image of a hand pressed flat against the inside of a trunk lid. not knocking. Pushing. Too weak to knock. She'd carried that image for 14 months like a piece of glass in her chest. When she told Minutjan, she expected him to be unsurprised. He was not unsurprised. He sat across from her at the glass table with the whole city burning below, and for 7 full seconds he said absolutely nothing. Then, "Do you understand what you just told me?" "I think so." "You are not a witness to a domestic crime, Cleo. You are the only living witness to a federal murder. Troy doesn't want you quiet. He wants you gone. Because as long as you're breathing, a federal case gets reopened, and every person connected to that case is exposed." The city burned below them. Indifferent. Enormous. Cleo looked at Minutjan's reflection in the glass. "You're not just a Mafia boss, are you?" He didn't answer, which, she was beginning to understand, was its own kind of answer, because if Minutjan had connections deep enough to know Desmond's name the moment she said it, then Troy hadn't just hired someone to kill her. He had accidentally handed her to the one man in this city more dangerous than himself. Speech Balloon Cleo is now the only witness to a federal murder, and she's living in a Mafia boss's penthouse. Troy is terrified. The FBI has a cold case. And Minutjan just went very, very quiet. Who do you think moves first? Chapter 7 is where Cleo stops being a victim and starts becoming something nobody saw coming. He didn't teach her how to fight. He taught her something far more dangerous. He taught her how to think. The first week, she barely spoke. She moved through the apartment like someone waiting to be told they'd overstayed. Quiet. Contained. Apologizing for things before there were even problems. Minutjan noticed every time. Said nothing. He understood, on a deep level, what it looked like when a person had been trained to take up less space. The second week, she started watching. The apartment was a nerve center. Isso ran free operation from the kitchen table. Men arrived and left on tight schedules. Conversations in Korean, in Mandarin, in carefully neutral English. Cleo didn't understand the language, but she understood patterns. She understood accounting. She understood, from 6 years of reading A Dangerous Man's Silence, how to extract information from what was not being said. By day 10, she had mapped the basic architecture of everything Minutjan ran. She didn't tell him. She stored it. Minutjan began teaching her, almost without deciding to. Not combat, not weapons. He taught her how to read a room by where people positioned their bodies. He taught her that fear wasn't the enemy, panic was. He taught her the difference between a man performing power and a man who actually had it. One night at the glass table, he said, "Where did you learn to think like that?" She said, "I survived a man smarter than most people gave him credit for. You learn fast, or you don't learn at all." Something shifted between them. Not romance. Something older. Recognition. Two people who had both, in completely different ways, been shaped by survival, both carrying losses they never named out loud, both pretending that was the same as being fine. Then his soul placed a folder on the table. A surveillance photo. Troy, at a South Side diner, meeting with two men nobody recognized. Isso said,